What's going on? Welcome back to Crackerjack Games. I'm Warren, and this is your home for Commander deck techs, cool cards, and now tournament reports? Let's get into it. But first, like, comment, and subscribe. That helps people like you find content from people like me. So, this weekend, I played in a cEDH tournament. It was the first one held in Alberta, independent of any big stores. In Alberta, we got together in Red Deer at Wizard's Loft, so I'd love to shout them out. Great cafe, great atmosphere, great place to play, and really central in the province, so hopefully we get to use that venue again. Tournament wasn't huge. We had 16 people come out, but being that it was the first time that we tried to do this, seems like it was a really good success. So I took along with me Rograk and Thrasios, which is a proactive teamer deck. I've been talking about it a lot, playing it a lot lately. It really focuses on trying to get Gaia's Cradle onto the battlefield and creating tons and tons of mana, along with Valley Floodcaller to play at instant speed, and Enduring Vitality to turn all of our creatures into Mana Dork, and eventually play Tidespout Tyrant to start looping through our deck with Thrasios to make infinite mana and create infinitely big creatures to take down the table. So now we're going to run through the tournament. I'm going to tell you how I got to winning the tournament. So here we go. Round one. I'm in seat 3. Seat 1, Blue Farm. Seat 2, Magda. And in seat 4, Thrasios Tymna. Game starts out pretty normal fashion. Blue Farm gambles, discards a Mindbreak Trap. Unsure if that's what they were going for, but it didn't really have an impact on the game. Magda gets played on turn 1, which is always a nice thing for that deck. On turn 1, I already had Gemstone Cavern on the battlefield, and I had Gaia's Cradle in my opening hand, so I was able to play Rograk and Thrasios. Turn 2 comes around, I draw Enduring Vitality, which is key. I get to play it, and now I still have mana available to cast Eldritch Evolution on the Enduring Vitality, and I get to put Seedborn Muse into play. I've got a turn 2 Seedborn Muse on a board where nothing else is really happening, and it's time to really pull ahead. Turn 3, I get to play the One Ring. I have to play through a bit of Orcish Bowmaster action, but by turn 4, I get to get Hullbreaker Horror out. I get to make a copy of it. I get to bounce my stuff to make infinite mana, bounce my opponent's things, and I get to attack and win the game. So a pretty good start out of turn 3. I'm 1-0 going into round 2. Round 2, I'm in seat 3 again. Seat 1 is Belby, Corrupted Observer. It's a green-black giant mana deck with big creatures and looking to eventually Chain of Smog combo out the table. But it really does try and thread the needle between big mana and staxing the table. Seat 2, we had Seaton, which is a Druids deck looking to put Great Oak Guardian into play to untap its Druids, make more mana, and make all of his creatures really, really big. Kind of cool deck. Again, I was in seat 3, and one of my carpool buddies was in seat 4 on Kark and Sakashima. He was also 1-0 already, which was awesome. So we get turn 1, Belby plays a creature that helps his opponents lose life. That was very kind of him. I know that means he's got tons of mana on turn 2. Turn 1 for Seaton, plays Utopia Sprawl, and that's kind of it. My turn 1, I'm able to play both commanders. I've got Springleaf Drum, Mox Diamond, Mox Amber on the battlefield. Amazing stuff. Can't believe it turned out so nicely. Kark just has typical Kark turn, which is get some stuff on the board. That's about it. On turn 2, in his post-combat main phase, Belby is able to play Culling Ritual, and this is going to be bad news from the table. It's going to turn all this colorless mana into black and green mana to allow him to do his thing. I know that can't happen, so I Flare of Duplication Rograk, and I take all of the permanent mana that was about to happen. That kind of stifles out his turn in a big way, But he plays Chains of Mephistopheles to slow down the table. I get back to my turn too. I've got Gaia's Cradle on the battlefield now. I've got Cloudstone Curio on the battlefield, and I've got Seedborn Muse. And we are starting to rebuild after the Culling Ritual. Turns kind of progress. I kind of pull ahead. Everyone sees that I've drawn a Cyclonic Rift, and Krark goes for a big turn by copying Jessica's Will. And in there, I end up firing off an overloaded Cyclonic Rift to kind of prevent them from winning the game. Unfortunately, Belby now goes and plays Winter Orb, and everyone's tapped out, and that's a big deal. I end up being 1 mana short of starting a Cloudstone Curio loop with Cloud of Fairies and Rograk on my turn. We go into Krark's turn for turn 5, I think, maybe turn 6, and he untaps 1 land. He's got Burgi and Krark on the battlefield, and in hand he's got Rite of Flame and Pact of Negation. And I've played enough games with him to know that he knows that if he doesn't go for it now, he will not win the game. So he fires off his Rite of Flame, he casts Pact of Negation, gets to put Rite of Flame back in hand, make extra mana, and he starts creating the snowball that Karkashima is so known for. Eventually, he ends up with Krark and Sakashima on the battlefield. He's produced mana. He gets Archmage Emeritus onto the battlefield, so now he's refilling his hand and drawing cards, and he has just a wicked Storm turn. Hits Molten Duplication, plays it, copies it a bunch of times. Now he's got like 15 or 20 Krarks on the battlefield, and he's just rolling handfuls of dice for his coin flips, and he wins the game by bolting us out. Great finish to the game. Kind of disappointed I didn't get there. He's 2-0. I'm 1-1. We're going into round 3. For round 3, I'm in seat 1. We've got another Thrasios and Tymna player in seat 2, Kinnan in seat 3, and Galta in seat 4. I have a great start. Rograk, Mox Amber, Springleaf Drum, Mystic Remora. I'm really set up, but the player playing Tymna Thrasios in seat 2 is pretty adamant that they don't play any non-creature spells to help me get back in the game, because obviously I have no cards in hand at this point. And that really works out well for him. He table talked really well throughout the whole game. Very strong player. He's able to curve out with creatures. So is Kinnan. Galta does a little bit of work. And through the first few turns, I draw no extra cards. But we've got a Grathama All Devouring on the battlefield, which is potentially draw 12 cards for Galta. But the board state quickly descends into chaos. The game pulls into a slog. We end up going right to time, and the game ends in the upkeep of Galta's, 7th turn, let's say. But when the game ends, there's 2 Wandering Archaics on the battlefield, 2 Opposition Agents on the battlefield, 2 Consecrated Sphinxes on the battlefield, a Volatile Stormdrake who has stolen an Orcish Bowmaster to prevent any more Consecrated Sphinxes shenanigans. And in the upkeep, Kinnan gets to flip again because they've got a Seedborn Muse. They put High Fae Trickster into play, and they're able to generate enough mana to flip through the rest of their deck, get Thrasios on the battlefield, and start drawing their deck. Now, they don't play Thassa's Oracle, which is really the only way they could win here. But we did have a scenario where I lost cards to Finale of Devastation X=2, copied to Opposition Agents, and the cards were copied for Wandering Archaic. So between the 2 players, TNT and Kinnan, they each pulled 3 2-drop creatures out of mine and their decks. That means Kinnan had access to an instant speed Thassa's Oracle on that turn. He wins the game. So again, the tournament wasn't huge. We only had 16 people. We had a cut to top 10, and if you're familiar with that kind of format, The top 2 go straight into the final, and then the next 8 play 2 pods for the final 2 seats. So I am going into this semifinal in 3rd position overall, which means I get to be seat 1 in one of the pods. Great. So for this round, I'm in seat 1. We have a Winota player in seat 2, the Kinnan player from my previous game in seat 3, and from round 1, the Blue Farm player there in seat 4. The game progresses really nicely. I have both my commanders on turn 1. I actually get to play a 1-ring, and Manamo is one of my lands on turn 2. So I'm just looking to get absolutely ahead on value. But things that have happened in the game include a Deafening Silence from Winota, Kinnan copying my 1-ring, me bouncing that, and then eventually copying an Orcish Bowmaster from the Blue Farm player. And I think they should have actually worked together against me with both Orcish Bowmasters, but they kind of go at each other with them. And of course, there's a Spellskite on the table. So the Kinnan's Orcish Bowmaster lives, and he's in really good control of the table as far as what gets to live and not live if extra cards are being drawn. So we've got a Deafening Silence, we've got an Orcish Bowmaster, and we've got a Spellskite. It's really hard to remove anything. The game kind of progresses. I've got my 1-ring up to 4 counters, and I actually don't even draw off it on 1 rotation of the table, so I took 8 damage for no reason between the first turn I untapped and the second turn I untapped with it. Finally, the Blue Farm player breaks, and he fires off a bounce spell and into the Floodmaw on the Deafening Silence, and the table all agrees we can't let him have that, so it ends up being redirected to the Spellskite. But I then see the window, and at 24 life, I activate the 1-ring and use Manamo to untap it and activate it again. I'm just going to draw 12 cards into an Orcish Bowmaster and try and find any combination of Displacer Kitten, Hullbreaker Horror, and a bounce spell. And I'm able to find 2 of those. I haven't found the Displacer Kitten yet. I get to use my Into the Floodmaw to take out the Deafening Silence now, and in my turn I get to untap, take 6 more damage from the ring, from the bird encounters, go to draw for my turn. I get to play Hullbreaker Horror and start chaining a little bit of action to bounce the Orcish Bowmaster, which is a Phyrexian Metamorph clone, off the table. In response to that, the Blue Farm player channels Otawara. I don't have an answer to it, so I have to pick that up. But I do have a Displacer Kitten in my hand, and I get to play it. And then I start playing Chrome Mox, Mox Amber, Mox Opal, because I got to draw another 7 cards. And I'm able to get up some mana because I have Soul Ring on the battlefield as well. Eventually, I get to replay my Tidespout Tyrant, and now I'm blinking my stuff and bouncing all my opponent's things. I generate enough mana to put it into Thrasios. I find Finale of Devastation. I make my creatures really big. And we get to Bastion. Off to the finals! So in the finals, seat 1 is my buddy playing Krark and Sakashima. Seat 2 is the Thrasios Tymna player from round 1 during the day. I'm in seat 3, and the Seaton player from earlier in the day is in seat 4. Pretty standard start for most of the game. TNT keeps a 1-lander with Mystic Remora, and we don't feed it, so he doesn't get to play any spells, which means on his second turn end step, I get to crop rotation for Gaia's Cradle, and I get to play Candelabra of Tawnos on turn 3, and flash in a Valley Floodcaller, which is great. I then draw Archdruid's Charm, and I'm able to tutor for Spellseeker, and that allows me to get Retraction Helix. And because I already have my Otter on the battlefield in Valley Floodcaller, on my turn, I get to cast Retraction Helix, targeting my Valley Floodcaller. I get to start picking up my Candelabra of Tawnos, playing it again, and untapping my Cradle, because I also have a Dour Portmage, and Enduring Vitality on the table. And I get to start making infinitely big Otter and Frog, as well as make infinite mana of both colors, blue and... This allows me to activate Thrasios, grab all my cards, and I come up with a pretty tidy turn 4 win. That's really exciting. I end up taking down the tournament. It was our first independent cEDH tournament in Alberta, and I'm just really happy with how things went for the deck, and for me, obviously. But everyone was great there, lots of good vibes. And the store, Wizard's Loft, great place to play. And Zach, who hosted it, was awesome. So I've got a tournament win under my belt. Really happy about it. Love for you to come back to the channel. We do deck techs. You can head to crackerjackgames.ca to pick up cards that you need. And I will keep you informed about how the cEDH tournament scene goes in Alberta.